Welcome back to the main stage of the Bay Area Battery Summit today with New Energy Nexus and Lawrence Livermore National Lab. We hope you enjoyed those roundtables and you got to network and meet some people and heard some great conversations and maybe had some good interaction. We're going to wrap it up here for the first day of the Bay Area Battery Summit with our keynote from the electricity sector, if you will. We're basically shifting from a sort of really geeky deep dive, as we've been having for the day so far, on technology, on all these issues like lithium extraction from brine and how to get capital from the grant-making Department of Energy or elsewhere, and that stuff, to the demand generation that we talked about at the outset of the day, and how the buyers are necessary pieces of this puzzle. So to begin building that bridge into the buyers and off-takers of the energy storage products, we thought we would invite, quote unquote, the most innovative electric company in the world. That's what Nick told me to describe East Bay Community Energy as. I mentioned earlier this morning, EBCE is my electricity provider in Alameda County, and they are a truly innovative company. Given the regulatory construct here in California, the problems that have beset the market with the investor-owned utilities, we shan't name those companies, but the community choice aggregators have come up just in a couple of years. They were literally a startup, and now they're a big business, delivering retail electricity to millions of meters and being very innovative about it, particularly with the deployment of energy storage behind the meter, in front of the meter, for resource adequacy, for other aspects of their business. And so we thought there would be no one better than Nick Chassett, the CEO of EBCE, since its inception. Prior to that, he was chief of staff for the president of the Public Utility Commission itself. And, you know, if you look Nick up, you'll find just recently in Utility Dive a great article by him and the CEO of another startup called OmConnect, really challenging some of the rules here in California to make the market even more competitive and therefore more positive for the uptake of energy storage. So with that, I'm really pleased to throw it over to Nick Chassett, CEO of East Bay Community Energy, to close us out, and I'll explain what's going to happen tomorrow at the end of this. But thanks again for being here at the Bay Area Battery Summit, and welcome, Nick.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Danny, for that wonderful introduction. I'm so pleased to be here today with so many of you. I just see a screen with the presentation, so I have no reason to be intimidated by the 400 global leaders in energy storage technology, deployment, and research and development. As Danny mentioned, I'm the Chief Executive Officer of East Bay Community Energy. We are a community choice aggregator, and we serve Alameda County. So if you live in Oakland, Berkeley, Fremont, much of the Bay Area, we are your electricity provider. So today in my talk, I wanted to share a little bit about what's been happening with CCAs, and then really focus on how I see, for California generally and for our CCA in particular, energy storage playing a really critical role in meeting both our customer reliability needs and the reliability needs of the grid. So let me start it off with a little bit more about CCAs. So, you know, as Danny mentioned, the CCA movement has been growing very, very quickly in California. Starting in 2010, the first CCA, MCE Clean Energy, launched to a couple 100,000 customers in first Marin County and then into Contra Costa and Napa. And you know, the growth since then has been very, very fast, with 2018 really being the inflection year for the transition of customers away from investor-owned utilities to CCA service. As Danny mentioned, also, CCAs are retail electricity providers, which means we buy and sell electricity while the investor-owned utilities continue to operate the grid infrastructure. As you can see, CCAs are active across the state, from the very north to the very south, and increasingly growing from the coast to the inland parts of the state. EBC specifically, we are about to start serving the city of Tracy. So we will no longer just be Alameda County. We'll be moving into San Joaquin County in 2021. To give you a sense of the load departure, here's a chart that sort of shows the trajectory. And what you find is in both PG&E and San Diego area, roughly 50% of customers are going to be served by CCAs in 2022. That's tens of millions of Californians who are going to get their power from community choice, public agencies that really are driven by the local priorities of local government and the local community. One of the underpinnings of CCAs has been a really aggressive strategy of procuring renewable energy over the last couple of years. So as of, I guess, this month, November 2020, CCAs have contracted for over 6,000 megawatts of new renewables across the state, north, south, east, and west. Not surprisingly, a lot of it's solar. But I think the next chart is probably the one that's going to be most interesting to folks here, and that is CCA energy storage procurement. So with that 6,000 megawatts of renewables, CCAs have started to procure very significant quantities of storage, and really predominantly lithium-ion battery energy storage. To date, a little over 1,100 megawatts and 4,400 megawatt hours of lithium-ion, the vast majority of which is paired with solar, but increasingly there are a number of fairly large, I think 100 megawatt, 400 megawatt hours is the largest standalone battery deal a CCA has done. And as the grid is going to be increasingly reliant on storage, there is an increasing emphasis on moving away from 4-hour batteries to long-duration technologies. While we CCAs are technology agnostic, when we think about long duration, there we really are focused on 8 hours, not so much lithium versus a different technology versus pumped. The CCA, a group of CCAs, actually East Bay is not participating in this particular effort, but a group of CCAs have launched a request for offers to seek to procure 500 megawatts of long duration storage to come online no later than 2026. At East Bay, we are not participating in this effort because we are actually just in the midst of running our own request for offers for renewables and storage, and seeking our own bids for some long duration opportunities. And so because of that, it didn't make sense for us to participate with these other CCAs. But what I think this highlights is just how aggressive the CCAs have been and will continue to be in driving the deployment of energy storage in California. So, this is my prerequisite slide, giving you a little bit more of a sense of where EBCE, East Bay Community Energy, operates. And given that this is the Bay Area Battery Summit, I figured that this map would be very familiar to many of you. Berkeley at the top, Fremont down at the bottom. Lots and lots of really great battery technology providers across our service territory. And, that's certainly something that we're always really excited about when we go out and enter into contracts with both battery and renewables developers, is the knowledge that so much of that innovation is happening in our service territory, and we can leverage that. So we've been operating for 2 years, and in that period, we have been able to procure a lot of clean energy, wind, solar, and energy storage. I think our most exciting energy storage opportunity to date is a project that is being developed in downtown Oakland. It's part of an initiative called the Oakland Clean Energy Initiative that is seeking to replace an old jet-fueled peaker plant in Jack London Square with in front of the meter energy storage and some grid enhancements. And those two projects are the Vistra Energy and the ES Volta projects. So those would be 45, 46 megawatts of in front of the meter storage right there in downtown Oakland. The other, I think, really exciting energy storage story to tell in our experience, at least, is our Sunrun behind the meter energy storage and resource adequacy project. And I'm going to speak to that a little bit more on the next slide, but it is one where we're focusing on aggregating residential multifamily solar and storage to provide grid services and resource adequacy. As part of that kind of effort to engage with our customers and support the deployment of energy storage, we have also been focused on trying to solve not just our grid services and grid reliability needs, but also the emerging challenge that face so many residents across Northern California, and that is public safety power shutoffs. In 2019, over 55,000 residents of the East Bay, and you can see the red sort of dots, those are all the homes that experience power shutoffs, experience at least 5 days of power outage. And so as we've been thinking about the solutions that we can bring to the table, we've really focused on the role that energy storage can play in supporting our customer resiliency, especially these customers who are at most risk of future power shutoffs. And to that end, we have entered into a contract with company Sunrun and actually a couple other CCAs as well to deploy 10 megawatts, roughly 2,000 residential and 100 commercial solar and storage systems across our service territory that will be designed to both support keeping the lights on for the customer when the grid may go down, but are also systems that our CCA can rely on to dispatch energy during periods of high grid reliability needs. These are the systems that we actually saw operate during our biggest challenges this August, and we expect as more of these solar and storage systems come online to have them meet an increasing percentage of our grid reliability needs. We also think this is a great opportunity to engage with customers around energy. People for the most part think about their energy needs as, do the lights turn on? Is the refrigerator cold? And it's generally an afterthought. But when the power starts to go off, that's when people really start to think about their energy requirements. And so we want to drive people towards beneficial outcomes for them environmentally and economically. And I think we see energy storage as a key to that story at the customer level. But the energy storage story for EBC and I think California, while very important behind the customer meter, I think it's just a totally different scale when we start thinking about our statewide needs. And those, first and foremost manifest through the integrated resource planning process. This is a process led by the California Public Utilities Commission, where they are assessing how much new clean energy resource needs to be built over the next 10 years to meet our climate goals. As a starting point, the state has set a 46 million metric ton target for the electric sector. And that trajectory, within it includes a very significant quantity of solar and energy storage that needs to be built. All load-serving entities, East Bay Community Energy among them, have been required to develop portfolios that support achieving this 46 MMT target and a more aggressive 38 MMT target. And so just to give you a sense of what this is going to mean from a resource development, particularly battery storage development perspective, under the two sort of base case scenarios that the state has set out for load-serving entities. Under 46 MMT, you're going to need to build 8,500 megawatts of battery storage over the next 10 years. And that really is the most conservative decarbonization scenario. And so I think from East Bay Community's perspective, from my perspective, that is really probably a fairly significant understatement of the total quantity of megawatts that the state's going to need. Now, under the more aggressive 38 million metric tons alternative, that need rises to over 10,000 megawatts of battery storage. And that's battery storage. That's not inclusive of, say, pumped hydro, which is that light purple bar on top. So clearly, we are going to need a heck of a lot of batteries that are going to be built and hopefully manufactured and built here in California using California technology. Now we start to think about, well, those two scenarios, they're 46 and 38 million metric tons. Those are the base cases. What about more aggressive scenarios? Because I think, the imperative that we're, all living in is, base case is not good enough. We need to go further. And this is where at East Bay Community Energy, we've been evaluating a more aggressive strategy. And so that third scenario that we've really been focusing on is a 30 million metric ton trajectory. So, a full 50% less than the 46 MMT. And under this scenario, one of the things that I think is so interesting is, one, you see, a fairly significant increase in total carbon-free and RPS, so from 69% carbon-free energy in 2030 to 82%. But what's really, I think, so fascinating is the fact that you see a tripling of energy storage to get to that level of deep decarbonization. And, I think what is even more interesting is the fact that under that aggressive scenario, you're going to need more energy storage capacity to be built out than energy generation capacity to be built out by 2030. And so, it's in that context that, we at East Bay are incredibly bullish on storage and are really doing everything we can to sort of build out our capabilities to develop, control, and operate just the massive amount of energy storage that's going to be needed. In our particular context, we feel like we may need to deploy 1,500 megawatts of energy storage over the next 10 years. That's just a massive scale that I think we are still ourselves trying to get our heads around. Now, as we think about the kinds of energy storage, it's going to be a mix of durations and very likely a mix of technologies. I think first and foremost in the next couple of years, we think that 2-hour energy storage is very likely to be the most economical and necessary type of energy storage deployment. Consider this past summer when we saw a number of hours where market prices were in the $700 and $800 range. I think our particular view is that more capacity and less duration in this next 2 to 3 year period is going to help to best manage those price spikes and those 1 to 2 hours a late evening of really significant price volatility. So as such, you're seeing most of our 2-hour storage gets brought online in 22 and 23. The next tranche is you're starting to see more of our 4-hour storage deployment come online, and that's sort of going to grow behind our 2-hour deployment. That's for both economic and for resource adequacy requirements. Resource adequacy, which is California's grid reliability program, deems a 4-hour battery to equal 1 full unit of capacity, and so that's really one of the main drivers of the 4-hour deployment timeline. Is in 23 and 24 and in 25, we really see a lot of that 4-hour being needed to meet our resource adequacy requirements. And then in 2026 and thereafter, we're starting to see long duration increasingly become an important part of our portfolio, reaching 10% of our total battery needs by 2030. And that's really to help us shift from the middle of the day to that late evening and kind of late night time period when we're going to start seeing more and more electric vehicle charging coming online, and certainly wind and solar are not going to be producing. So that's my sort of presentation that I wanted to share. I do want to sort of comment a little bit further though on where we see resource deployment and sort of where we see technology going for battery storage and energy storage more broadly. I think generally speaking, at least in the near term, I continue to believe lithium ion is going to be the most bankable and most cost-effective solution. The adjacency of multiple other sectors using the technology, electric vehicles being first among them, is going to continue to drive prices down. But certainly there are going to be stationary use cases where other technology types and chemistries are going to be really important. And I think it's going to predominantly be in that long duration segment where we need 8, 10, 12 hours, where we're going to start to see some of these new technologies come in. And we think the deployment is really going to kind of be in that period towards the end of the decade. So that 27, 28, 29 timeframe is when we think these technologies are going to need to be ready to be commercialized and ready for prime time on the grid. Then, as we start to think about the period beyond 2030, and that's really when I start to personally feel like other types of very long duration, more the seasonal energy storage is going to start to play a more significant role. So that might be your renewable hydrogen, pardon me, as one example that we're going to need to help get us from 2030 to 2035. So, the big story is this. We're going to need a tremendous amount of energy storage and battery storage development and deployment here in California over the next 10 years. It's absolutely critical from an economic perspective that we develop and build that technology in this state. I think one of the lessons learned from the solar development experience is losing some of the control and some of the benefits of solar technology overseas has been a lost opportunity. Nonetheless, in the Bay Area, we still have the world's largest tracker manufacturer and Next Tracker. We have the most significant electric vehicle manufacturer in Tesla, and we want to very much make sure that the battery technologies of the future are also built here in the Bay Area and in California. So with that, thank you very much for listening to me share our experience and our view on energy storage in California. And I hope day 2 is as good as the first one.
Absolutely, Nick. An awesome way to end day 1 with that really visionary perspective, and not surprised that you sort of blew my mind a little bit with just how much we've got to do with energy storage in the next decade. Though I like the ramp. I feel like we can meet that objective, and I think a lot of the audience will appreciate your final words there about building it here in California. If you've got 5 minutes, we do officially on our agenda still have till 4:15, and so just a couple of questions coming in, and if anyone else wants to put them on the chat, please do. One, though, Nick, is just a practical matter, which is that vision of 8,500 or 10,000 or however many megawatts of storage. How does that fit with an aggressive rollout of load management technologies? If we're doing pre-cooled buildings and fridges and preheating water and shifting energy intensive loads to different times of excess capacity, will we need as much? Have you modeled that?
So our modeling of load management, largely is focused on helping to ensure all of the electrification that is occurring doesn't significantly increase that need. So, to get where we need to go from a climate perspective, we need to massively electrify our transportation sector and the built environment. And our expectation is that the bulk of the benefit of load management is going to come in helping us manage all of that load growth. Not to say there isn't tremendous opportunity for management of the loads we have today. There certainly is, but the load growth is going to come so quickly, and it's going to come not necessarily where we expect it to come, that I think spending a lot of our energy ensuring that that load is smart and manageable is really going to be where a lot of our priority is. And so because of that, you still need sort of that underlying base clean capacity to manage the loads we have today.
Interesting. All right. Well, look, I want to let you go and let everyone end here on time. So, thank you again. Really a good treat to have you sort of set us up for a conversation tomorrow, which gets more into this sort of demand side conversation. We're going to kick it off in the morning